Ahoy hoy gang, if this is your first time with us, welcome, and if you're joining us from a previous video, hey, we love to see it, and I hope you're doing well. It's season 14, our second post-movie season. With last season giving us some of the most emotional episodes of the show, and showing the show still had plenty of creativity left in the tank, how does season 14 stand up to the long shadow of season 13? Well, there's only one way to find out and 3 questions to be asked. What worked, what failed, what recorded zombie apocalypses will be curtailed. There's a lot to love and a lot to be seen when we review season 14. Linda was talking with her mom, Gloria, and thinks that the kids should do some chores to help out around the house. The kids disagree. That's the episode. This is technically our anthology episode, I guess? I mean, if this is the closest thing we get to one, I'll take it. I'm not that mad we're getting it out of the way. It's just, yeah, the kids arguing against chores because they don't want to do them, and then all of a sudden, it's a Western. Bob tells everyone a bedtime story about a Wild West town, and Louise and Linda start to interject over each other again and again, shaping the story. Oh look, Louise is pushing that Bob and Linda are evil for asking her and the other kids to take on more responsibility around the house because they usually don't really do much of anything. But no, see, it's Grandma that's wrong, because she thought the kids were doing chores the entire time, and who cares if the kids don't hold up to her antiquated standards of, you know, the bare minimum of light chore work. What? It's not even like they're getting up to milk the cow at dawn or anything. It's literally just, you know, maybe fold some laundry here and there, help clean up, and they're just like, no, screw you. It's just like, okay, awesome. Like, Bob isn't against using blackmail to coerce the kids into helping if he actually had some dirt on them, because they're going to sink their heels in and just refuse every step of the way, and it's nothing. I actually found myself missing some of the other anthologies because this just felt like half measures. Sure, there was references to like Tombstone and The Quick and the Dead, but they're so minute that they don't really matter, and the entire episode did not excite me for the rest of the season. Fun fact, this would be the first time Marshmallow would appear with a new voice. Jerry Jones would actually replace Dave Herman as the voice of everyone's sweet potato pie loving music legend. They do a great job of breathing fresh life into the character as they get brought more and more into the forefront, as we'll see next season. The episode as a whole, though, is just sorta okay. The story is pointless, the anthology feels shoehorned in, and overall definitely one of the weakest episodes of the entire season. Fight at the Not Okay Chorale is a corralled and locked up 6 out of 10. Oh look, the birds from Back in the Ring from season 10 are back! Oh, and they're flying away because this isn't a Belcher-focused episode? It's a Rudy episode? Nani? Yeah, it turns out Rudy and his dad are getting ready for their family dinner with Rudy's mom and her new boyfriend, and Rudy's dad and his date. Rudy, of course, getting excited to do a new magic trick and even goes to see Esmeralda at the magic shop to find something especially cool for a magician on a budget. Esmeralda would be played by Cheryl Lee Ralph of Abbott Elementary. Rudy gets some powder, they go to dinner, and when it's time for his big trick, he doesn't let the water absorb into the powder long enough and makes a mess. Everyone tries to take care of it, and Rudy runs over to the Belchers where they're preparing Gene's hard-earned reward, a loaded potato lasagna. Huh. I think this is where I really appreciate this new emotional angle to the show. The dinner isn't this grand weird affair. If anything, the restaurant dinner is far too normal. Everyone is acting like everything is too okay. No one is all that upset with Rudy, just worried if the mess stains clothes. And Rudy finds peace, solace, and camaraderie in an apartment above a burger joint where the family is enjoying a weird lasagna. The Belchers are weird but good people, and comparing Louise in this episode to the last episode is night and day. Because when Linda and Bob decide to take Rudy back before his parents start to worry, Louise actually walks back with him to make sure he has support for an awkward dinner he might not be able to handle alone. There's no unnecessary kiss or hand-holding or anything like that to make the scene overly sappy. She's just walking next to him and standing next to him at the restaurant, showing that he isn't alone. Rudy doesn't need to keep his family together. That's not his job. And it can be really difficult on children when their parents get divorced, especially with that awkwardness that lingers after the fact when everyone wants to try and get along. It's a sweet human episode that tackles something that's incredibly hard to capture. There aren't a ton of jokes, if any, and the music is just phenomenal in how it shows the tension and stress of Rudy juxtaposed with the almost everyday melancholy of the actual dinner. The Amazing Rudy is a double-baked and overloaded 9 out of 10. I don't really know, man. I really want to like this season, but it's giving me whiplash. Is this peaks and valleys? Because this feels very peaks and valleys. The B story? Tina's babysitting Gene and Louise and forces them to play basically a game of life/Monopoly hybrid focused around being a veterinarian, and oh look, Tina's absolutely horrible at it and keeps trying to win and gets pushed further and further. But why is Tina babysitting? Oh, that's because Linda has to help Gretchen throw her sister Justin a bachelorette party when Gretchen completely messed it all up. Oh, and Bob has hemorrhoids and has to drive them around while sitting and setting up a strip show at the restaurant since Pickles is closed for fumigation. What a concept. We'd also get Maren Dungy as Miss Baker in this episode, and she'd be a recurring voice throughout the series. I'll say this, Rachel Dratch as Jess in this episode is honestly fantastic. I loved everything about her, and she really elevated what was otherwise just a reskinned Bob or Linda and Teddy episode. Like, I know Gretchen and Teddy are both voiced by Larry Murphy, but this episode especially, it just felt like a Linda and Teddy or Bob and Teddy story where they just made it Gretchen for some reason. Before this episode, I could tell there was a distinct difference between the two characters, but if you close your eyes and listen to Gretchen in this episode, it literally just sounds like things Teddy would say. Now, either that means the writers are getting lazy, which I doubt, considering we just had the Mother of All Rudy episodes, or they just don't know what to do with Gretchen and Teddy at this point, and it kinda shows. Gretchen's honestly the weakest part of an episode that she really needed to carry. The episode is perfectly there, I just wish it did something more and actually had some kind of weight to it. Instead, we get Tina failing at a board game and failing to watch strippers in a tea party, and Bob finally being brave enough to get the butt needle for his hemorrhoid. So glad peace has returned to the Belcher bubble. The Picklerette is a briny and whiny 6 out of 10. Gene has a music contest he wants to enter and swears that he heard the best song of his life in his dream and wants to go back into his dreams to remember it. So Mr. Ambrose guides him to look into the ancient and deep art of lucid dreaming. Why is Mr. Ambrose just like the most mystical witch lucid dreamer known to man? Also, Billy Eichner's performance this episode just sounded off. It almost makes me wonder if they recorded from a home studio or something. It stands out. And yeah, Gene starts to go to bed right as the sun starts to set and starts to push himself deeper and deeper until he can recreate the song. The B story? You want the B story on this bendy dreamscape epic? Are you sure you can handle it? Are you strapped down? Are you sure? Linda promises Louise and Tina $10 if they can catch the cricket that's been keeping the family up, so they cover the floor in sugar and traps to catch the hopping menace. Yep. That's the whole thing. Oh look, Gene got the song from his dreams, and it's just the worst thing imaginable. Sunday does in fact come after Saturday. Real groundbreaking stuff. And I know obviously the big get of an episode like this is to see how weird and wild Gene's dreams are, but they just sort of, aren't? Sure, they're kinda warped, I guess, but if you're gonna do a story like that, especially about lucid dreaming, go creepier, go weirder, go more and more abstract. We kinda got that when he was trying to play his piano and it kept falling apart on him, but that was really about it. It's a very held back and restrained episode, and I just wish it had a bit more oomph and development to it. When you have a short season like this, those valley episodes are more and more pronounced, and especially here, this feels like the most Flanderized Gene I've ever seen. He likes music, is weird, and will be selfish and odd because that's all he is. And it's just, the dream sequence is really your big sell, and we've seen things like Fluise, or Dream a Little Dream of Bob, but here, it's just so normal? Oh look, he's on a bus, but the bus is a boat, and then his mom is there. Wacky. Like, this is your chance to really take it somewhere, to really be something standout. And the show that I commend the animation and the angles for is surprisingly flat this episode. It's disappointing. Running Down the Gene is a bus boat riding. 6 out of 10. When a new kid comes to school and Zeke starts to freak out, Louise and the gang think the new kid is a bully and decide to take him out since they don't tolerate bullies of any kind. Interesting stance for Louise, but I'll take it. Will would be played by Al Madrigal. Well, turns out Will isn't a bully, but was actually bullied by Zeke years ago, and Zeke is incredibly apologetic about it, because he made fun of Will's lisp and felt horrible. Zeke wants to atone, and is even willing to lick the burger wall to make peace. I mean, if Zeke wasn't so outright apologetic, I think I'd hate this episode, but he's genuinely riddled with guilt. Imagine the guy that likes to run up and wrestle people was a bully that felt bad about his actions and wanted to be better while still being his wild wrestling self. What a concept. I love that Zeke is trying to be a better person and owning his past. It takes a lot of courage to try and change, and Zeke is actively doing it because he doesn't want to hurt people. It's a very nice and important touch to actually humanize the one character you could argue is the most traditional idea of a bully. Zeke isn't a bad guy. He's done bad things that he feels apologetic for, but he isn't a true bad guy. And our entire adventure with him is him making up for his past mistakes. That angle alone makes the Ace story worth it. It feels way better than Not Without My Zeke. Like, this is an actual story. The B story has Bob coming up with burger balls, and Jimmy Pesto steals it to make pizza balls to smack on slices of pizza and be a success off of Bob's creative work. Oh look, a tale as old as time. This would actually be the first time Eric Bauza played Jimmy Pesto and would be his new voice going forward. It's definitely an adjustment, and you can hear he's really trying to mirror Jay Johnston's inflection with him, and I get you can't completely write the character out, and you gotta rework him, and Eric Bauza does do a great job with the character, but you can tell he's trying to be an imitation, much like Big Bob. I'd really like if he had a unique character at this point he could voice, but that's just me. When they have to fall into how another actor played this character, they're not allowed to be as creative. And I'd really like to see them have a character all their own that they can shine with. And I do appreciate when Bob stands up to Jimmy and tells him he's going to have an even better idea tomorrow and doesn't care what Jimmy does, because if you're going to drop those lines, I don't know, maybe retire Jimmy after this point? Bob doesn't win this fight. He calls Jimmy a fraud and says he'd never want to be him and walks off as Jimmy's restaurant is absolutely teeming with people loving the pizza ball pizza. I mean, it's a fine enough conclusion to Jimmy, but you know he's still gonna be there next week and it takes the weight of the moment away. It's an episode you really hope wouldn't be forgotten from episode to episode, but you know deep down it will. Believe it or not is a walking on air and wall licking 8 out of 10. Mr. Fishodor wants Bob to join him on a wilderness glamping retreat as his personal chef and has him blindfolded as they go to the secret island, where we see Calvin's eccentric friends back from the last gingerbread house on the left and all their personal chefs. One of Calvin's friends starts to trip and hunts the men down like he's a wild animal, and yeah, they all have to band together to get off the island, with the rich willing to sacrifice the poor Bob at any chance they can get. Oh look, it's Mr. Fishodor and Bob bonding as they try and escape. It's fine. The B story. Linda teaches the kids about cocktail parties and party etiquette so they don't commit any heinous party fouls when they're going to posh high-end parties. It's just sorta wholesome and down to earth, compared to Bob actively fighting for his life and being tied down to be sacrificed by a bunch of richies. It feels like an early season episode with a lot of dark comedy and really diving into the absurdity of the situation. I don't know, it's a great turn your brain off and enjoy episode. It never overcomplicates itself and just sorta coasts while keeping a steady pace. There's just not a lot to talk about with this episode. There's no deeper meaning or weight to anything, and that's perfectly fine. It's a show on Sundays on Fox. It doesn't need to reinvent the wheel every single week. It just also doesn't do much either. But that's kind of a charm of an episode like this. The jokes carry it. The sharp jokes, the great character work, the fantastic voice acting by Kevin Kline, and the return of Andreas Duboucher. Like, there is so much here to love and appreciate for a good, dumb Bob's Burgers episode. I don't want it to sound like I absolutely hate this episode. I don't. It never felt like it was a waste of my time. It never felt like it was just coasting to the end. It was perfectly serviceable as an episode that is okay. Escape from which island is a mud for the mud god chanting 7 out of 10. King Trashmouth has a limp, so Linda wants to get him captured so she can take a look and see what's going on. She calls Animal Control to catch him, and yeah, Animal Control isn't just gonna catch the king, they're gonna have to put him down. So Linda has to help King Trashmouth escape the threat that she introduced. The Animal Control officer would be voiced by Ugly House Master and thieving good girl, Retta. The B story has Bob visited by Ian, the manager of the Sea Breezes, one of his favorite bands, who's performing at the block party outside. Ian tells Bob how miserable they all are and how there's nothing worse than just getting older doing the thing you thought made you happy and now you're trapped in it. Huh. Hey, consider subscribing, maybe? Yeah, wow, that's just a ray of sunshine right there. Ian, ironically yet beautifully, would be played by indie comedy master Julian Barrett, who you'd recognize from things like The Mighty Boosh and The Great. He's a phenomenal voice, but man, I wish this story had more of the focus. Like, most of the episode is Linda trying to find King Trashmouth before Animal Control, and Louise getting kids up into the apartment to watch the block party from the special seats so they can charge them a premium. Bob wonders what it would be like being old and still flipping the same burgers over and over, and then Ian shows him the band playing their one hit and having a blast, showing that sometimes the misery fades away and you get to just play and enjoy yourself. Huh. That's surprisingly wholesome and inspiring, but again, just sort of forgotten because we have to focus on King Trashmouth and Teddy and that whole crew. The episode needed to get out of its own way in a lot of regards. Jokes weren't allowed to breathe, and they were really just hoping you'd care about Linda's self-inflicted struggle. It's perfectly okay. The Raccoon King and I is a pickle enticed 7 out of 10. Bob is terrified that his dad is going to doom and gloom up the kids' time with him at Wonder Wharf since he's been talking about the end of days and how things are just going to start falling apart. The kids run into a clam that's operated out of a closet and decide to investigate, getting hooked on using the talking clam to prank people until they get stuck in the closet and have to cry out for help. The Bobs talk and Big Bob reveals that sure, he's scared of the future, but he just wants everyone to be okay after he's gone, and seeing the kids gives him hope that the future isn't going to be all that bleak. It's a very real conversation you'd expect two people from two different generations to have. I don't know. I really appreciate the honestness of it all. He's not doomsday prepping and building a bunker or anything. He's an old man that's worried about the future and what'll happen after he's gone. It's a lot like Fry's dad in Futurama, who just want to make sure Fry and Yancey were prepared for whatever they encounter in the future that he could never fathom that day. It's a good story for the Bobs to have, and I appreciate that Bob has a relationship with his dad while also looking out for his kids. They may not get along all the time, but they can still just talk to each other. They can have a rapport. Their relationship honestly seems better than Linda and Gloria's, much less Al's. Like, I don't know, it seems like their relationship has evolved over time. They're talking more and more, and Big Bob is involved with the family more and more. It feels like they're both putting in an effort to be a tighter family. Maybe I just relate to it, maybe it's just something special, but I appreciated this dreary day at Wonder Wharf. Oh, and the B story has Linda helping Teddy take a photo where he doesn't look creepy to post online for job boards, and that's honestly terrific. We've been severely lacking in Teddy this season, and I'm so glad he's creeping in more. Wharf Me Worry is a prophetic clam advised 9 out of 10. Okay, I was expecting to hate this episode. Just absolutely dread it. It's our Halloween episode. Yeah, woo, whatever. Oh, look, they're making a documentary about how great Louise is with her little Katniss bow. And it's very obviously spliced together to show her being so awesome and cool. Oh, and then zombies attack while they're trying to film and the family struggles to survive until they're being picked off one by one. And it's up to Louise and her trusty bow to actually save the day. And it pulls back to reveal it was a movie all made by the family? Oh. So it's bad. No. No. This episode right here, this is art. Yeah, sure, the Rudy episode's whatever. Can we talk about the very obvious influence for this episode from 2017's One Cut of the Dead? You know, the zombie movie within a zombie movie, which is a fantastic watch and you need to give it a shot. It is terrific. Obviously, they don't go as dark as that movie here, but you can tell the references. It's also a really great send-off of like VHS horror and found film. So you're getting that Blair Witch energy. You're getting, again, One Cut of the Dead, and it's brilliant. This is an absolutely masterful episode, and I adore every bit of it. This is easily one of my favorite Halloween specials of all time. This is an episode of Bob's Burgers I would show to anyone to get them to really appreciate how aware and in-depth the show is. I hate to keep doing it, but look at The Simpsons Treehouse of Horrors or whatever Family Guy Halloween special they churn out. For the majority, they're very flat, almost cursory overviews of kinda horror and Halloween related properties and dumb Halloween jokes. Here, they're actually talking about independent movie elements, and even in the end, when they're talking about the movie in retrospect, Bob is upset that people survived since it's a genre standard and a political statement, which, could you imagine Homer, Stan, or Peter ever saying anything like that? Fry? I could see it, but the dynamic there is much different. Bob genuinely loves movies, especially campy horror and foreign films like we saw back in Vampire Disco and Hawk and Chick. He knows the tropes, and that adds so much more to his character than just being food obsessed. Like I could see him doing a sorta Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode sometime. That would make sense for who he is. And his love of media imprints itself on the kids. I want you to watch this episode and pay attention to the camera angles they're using. See how the POV switches. They treat the camera like it's right there with them because it is. It's a masterful attention to detail that makes this my hands down favorite Halloween special of the show. The jokes are clever, the animation's fantastic, and everything I could possibly need from it is here. Fraud of the Dead Zombie Docupocalypse is a condiment covered 10 out of 10. It's our Christmas episode! Ho, ho, ho. The power is out at the restaurant, and Mr. Fischoeder needs someone to go up to his lodge and watch it for Christmas, so Bob and the family go. Cool. They have to keep the grounds up in the mountains, but when the Christmas tree falls off the car, Linda goes chasing after it, and Bob tries to cover up the gruesome art of the lodge while the kids mess around to try and attract Santa by letting him know where they're staying. Because if you don't put a giant belcher in the backyard, how is he gonna know they're there? Either he's magical and omnipotent, or just a fat old man. The family realize Linda is missing, Linda fails to save her tree, and they have their own rickety Christmas at the lodge. I mean, I like Larry Murphy's Santa Gluten song, but that's really about it from this episode that makes it any kind of watchable. It's just boring. We would get Mike Ivey as the electrician, so that's kind of cool, with Mike Ivey having been on the Sarah Silverman program, so, you know, it's all connected and all that jazz. But overall, it's just sort of okay. I don't know. The jokes never really did it. The mural Bob's trying to cover is incredible, but overall, it's just a nothing experience, especially when it comes after such an incredible Halloween episode, much less that powerful Christmas spectacle of the last season. Which, honestly, you know, I'm back on the we don't need another Christmas special after that one. That was kind of a masterpiece. Just feels like a missed opportunity overall. The Nightmare 2 days before Christmas is a gluten-loving, ski shed storming 6 out of 10. I am so torn on this episode. Teddy gets trapped when he was trying to install a false back to a safe in a bunker for Gerald, played by Brian Gaddis. So Bob has to put on his giant boy detective hat and get to the bottom of this mystery as he goes to find his friend. He even runs into Harry, a guy that's just driving down the road, who would be played by comedy legend David Alan Grier. Great to see him and stuff again. Love that he's popping up more. Bob has to sneak and weave, and it's honestly a terrific A story where we actually get Teddy right in the middle of it. I love that we're finally getting more Teddy this season, and this is a perfect episode for him. Bob follows fragrances they manage to hide from Gerald, and the day is saved. The B story? The kids want to get a large group to order their super burger, the Beefhemoth, since Bob isn't there to tell them no, and Linda needs very little coercing to join in on their schemes. You know, I'm a sucker for big food, and they did pitch it and everyone was on board, and a Beefhemoth was served. They got what they wanted. It was too much for them because of course it was. It's the Beefhemoth, but it did exist. It wasn't a scheme. It was just genuine cooking majesty. And I don't know, I loved it. It's an episode I think should not work as well as it did, yet I was loving every bit of it. It was great to see Bob be a detective, great to see Linda and the kids get creative, and there was that perfect blend of comedy and tension that made the episode a resounding success and showed this is absolutely peaks and valleys. Mission Impossible is a Beefhemoth conquering 10 out of 10. Look, I'm a simple man and something of a flawed critic. I am not going to sit here and pretend I'm better than anyone, and this episode is why. Let's get into the A story. Linda and Louise are taking a tour of an old speakeasy hotel from the old Prohibition days and learn the story of a hidden jade statue that could be worth a fortune. And oh look, there's Logan and Cynthia to get in the way when they hear them talking about the statue and decide to look for it themselves. Like, yeah, it's a generic Linda is afraid for Louise and doesn't want her to get hurt story while they're going around the town looking for the statue. But what makes it interesting is they actually go to the Underwharf first shown in the movie. We're getting callbacks to the movie that aren't just the road or the geyser in the intro. It's a very neat yet simple touch. Well, they get caught by Mr. Fishoder and he takes the statue, which was fake anyway, and ends up giving Louise her cut, and all that is perfectly fine. Let's talk about why this episode sings. The B story has Bob in the middle of a turf war. With one of the boardwalk performers performing on the Great Boardwalk in the Sky, all the other performers get together at Bob's to figure out who gets the spot. We'd even get the bubble guy, played by David Zayas, who you'd recognize from The Bear or Dexter. You got a balloon lady, a juggler, and then you get a pipe man. The entire B story, Pipe Man is just crafting something in the back while everyone puts on their performances, and then he blows them all away with the incredible PVC-utilized musical harmony that he creates. Is Pipe Guy played by some special guest voice? Nope. It's David Herman doing his hobo cop voice he used in Paradise PD, and I could not stop laughing. Like, again, I'm not better than anyone, and I enjoyed quite a bit of Brickleberry and Paradise PD. I'm not ashamed to admit that. They got as many seasons as they did for a reason. Rip to a real one, Lance Riddick. But hearing SpongeBob go Frosty the Blowman will never not be funny to me. So here's Dave Herman doing one of his best voices ever and bringing this wondrous pipe guy to life like only he could. If the episode has flaws, I genuinely just don't care. Not even Logan and Cynthia could bring me down from this high. Jade in the Shade is a piped and performing 10 out of 10. Tina's excited to get some proper upper butt action at a house party and wants to really get in close with Jimmy J. At the party, however, she has to wash her dress and spends the majority of the episode in the laundry room with Sam, played by Ben Wong. Sam has social anxiety and is super nervous about going out and dancing, and Tina spends time with him to try and calm him as they take things one step at a time. It feels a lot like these boots were made for stocking, and I gotta admit, I don't relate at all. But I'm also not a teen girl, never have been. I'm a very adult man. This could be relatable to the target demographic of the show now, and could be a very impactful thing to showcase. I was just absolutely bored by it. The B story? Perfectly serviceable. Teddy gets in on the pallet building craze and actually builds a mini Bob's Burgers in the basement made entirely out of pallets, and they actually do a sort of underground restaurant experience with their brunch buddy until they find a bunch of beetles and egg sacs in the pallets and quickly have to dismantle them. It's a perfectly there episode that I'm sure someone will analyze for 40 minutes and prove me wrong about that. But the jokes just kind of floated along, and while it wasn't bad, it just wasn't special either in my book. Again, I'm sure it's a personal preference thing, but the episode just seemed to drag. The litter box scenes were unnecessary and just felt like an artificial inflation to get to that sweet, sweet 22 minutes. I don't know. Who's padding? You're padding. But Sweatin' Fears is a slow dance embracing, sweat-soaked 6 out of 10. It's Rudy's dad's birthday party at the bowling alley and everyone's gonna be there. Rudy, Rudy's mom, Rudy's mom's boyfriend, everyone. Linda and Bob awkwardly accidentally invite themselves to the bowling party and just sort of fumble their way through, which is the most real thing I've ever seen from this show. They just keep sort of feeling obligated to involve themselves. Meanwhile, there goes Louise trying to help Rudy's dad look super impressive in front of everyone so that he can try and win back Rudy's mom, and they even have a bowling attendant help them to rig the game to help Rudy's dad and show off why he's the best so he can get that win and get the morale boost he desperately needs. Except he really doesn't need it. Rudy's dad is honestly never really bothered and seems to be handling everything super maturely to the point that Rudy just stops everything and goes to spend some time with his dad. Tina also tries to hook Rudy's dad up with a woman in his cooking class because she's a G like that. Is it as good as the previous Rudy episode? I would argue no, but it's not trying to be. It's definitely much more jokey and lighthearted, and a kid's view of adult relationships and the shifting paradigms of everyday interaction after something like, say, a divorce. Great that we got more time in the bowling alley, and my Lebowski-loving heart was full from it, but it was just another very casual episode that really emphasized the, hey, life moves on angle, and so do we. The Big Steblitsky is a Jesus-defying 7 out of 10. Gail wants to enter a competition show called Tough Stuff Island, and she wants Linda and the kids to help her make her audition tape showing off how awesome and cool and fearless she is. Linda trying to reel her eccentric sister in at every turn, while the kids goad and encourage her more and more. I actually really love this for Gail and think it's a great addition to her character. She always wanted to be famous, and if it's for the sake of her dream, she's willing to be way more of a risk taker to try and really put herself out there. She's gonna do one-woman shows, she's gonna try and perform, or get Mr. Business to be the next big cat star. This is on brand for Gail. And by the end of the episode, Linda is actually starting to encourage her, which is great. You never get the feeling that Linda wants Gail to hold back because she's going to outshine her, but because she just doesn't want her little sister hurt, or worse, embarrassed as one of the joke submissions to the show. But sure enough, she gets her audition on the promo, and while she doesn't make it, that's good enough for Gail, and she's happy with it. It's terrific and had some really fantastic jokes while Megan Mullally absolutely shined. Easily one of my favorite Gail episodes of all time. The B story? Bob gets an electric meat grinder that gives him way more free time since it's so easy, but he starts to miss his old hand crank grinder and eventually decides to go back to it. It's simple, but I'm honestly surprised we haven't had a story like this sooner. It's reminiscent of To Bob or Not to Bob, but makes way more sense than him actively self-sabotaging by giving up more restaurant space. You can absolutely make an argument for preferring to hand grind your meat, and his holding up the line is just dumb in a fun way. I don't know. I really didn't hate this episode at all and was very pleasantly surprised. I was genuinely surprised at how invested I was in this episode, in wanting to see how far Gail would get into seeing Bob's inner turmoil about an electric grinder. It's just so wholesome and human and fun. I don't know, I really liked it. The Right Tough Stuff is a bridge diving crank to the max 9 out of 10. And here we are, the season finale. Sergeant Bosco needs to go undercover as a chef to help catch a criminal, so he goes to Bob to teach him the vernacular of the slop shop and to be a true patty flipper. And that's really the episode. Bosco blowing off all of Bob's teaching to join in when the kids want to play hide the pickle and just sort of coasting through everything. If it wasn't for Gary Cole, I think I would have hated this episode way more than I did. But when I hear that all too familiar voice, I just let him say whatever he wants and just enjoy it. Sure enough, the man he wants to impress comes into the restaurant and everyone panics and tries to find a way for Bosco to impress him, even having Linda and Teddy run out to get another burger for him to try. Doesn't that all feel like something you've seen before? Want to know something fun? Vincent, the restaurateur that Bosco wants to impress, would be played by a thing of a man that knows a thing or two about bears, Ebon Moss-Backrack. You know, the guy from The Bear and who's gonna play the Thing in the new Fantastic Four. That guy. I will say this, first time I've ever heard him voice act, and he's phenomenal. He brings a much needed energy to the episode. I mean, the dude's terrific. I can't emphasize enough, he's one of the best guest stars of the season, and sells an otherwise whelming season finale. Is this a good season finale? No, not really, and it definitely isn't about to beat Amelia anytime soon, but it's a perfectly fine Bosco episode. Just never does anything that makes you go, wow, that was a great episode of Bob's Burgers. It's just sorta there. To Catch a Beef is a Slop Shop supported 8 out of 10. And there we have it, that's season 14. Anything you think I was right on, wrong on? What was your favorite episode, least favorite? Let me know in the comments below. And if you liked what you saw, consider liking, subscribing, and tell your friends we're out here. Season 14 was definitely a grab bag of quality. Sometimes you get absolutely fantastic episodes about facing your fears and awkward dinners, and others you get butt sweat and burnt out rockers with raccoons. It was a shorter season, so I'm definitely surprised that overall it was just kind of fine. I had high expectations going into the season, and stepping out of it, I just don't think they were met overall. Needed more Teddy. That's it. That's what it needed. The Teddy level's way too low. Needs more. Pump it up. That being said, season 15 is still coming out at the time of writing this review, so I can't definitively say they'll be better or worse than what we had here. All I know is we'll get a boogie boarding open mic night that'll leave you missing your favorite old school drive-in when we give a Pokemon an attack boost by feeding it a protein and review season 15. The teens are tricky, okay? Which is a sentence that could never be taken out of context, I assure you. So it's just, there's so many teens to rhyme with. Only 5 more to go. Anyway, that's going to do it for us here at the Lecture Hall. And if you want to support the channel, consider joining our Patreon or membership program today. $2 a month and you get special polls, posts, and even your name on this fancy list. Woo! Thank you all so much for watching. And like always, remember to stay strong, keep fighting, and remember that I believe in you. Even if you just woke up today, that's good enough. You got this. Goodbye, everybody, and I'll see you all next time.